So does it mean that it automatically go to YouTube, sir, or do we need to do something?
That's right.
No, you have to go to ನನಗೀಗಿಲ್ಲ ರೈಟ್ಸ್ ಈಗ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಮೋರ್ ಅಂತ ಒಂದಿರುತ್ತೆ.
Dr. Vijay, I think let Ganeshan be host and you be
That's fine. That's fine. Co-host, yeah. That's what. Sir, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸರ್ ಅದು? more ಎಲ್ಲಿ left to right?
Right side record ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ.
Right side live on YouTube.
Live streaming ಹಾಕಿ. Live streaming last one
live streaming. One second, sir. 1 second. Live on custom live streaming service, correct?
Live streaming, yes.
Right, sir. Done, sir. So does this mean it will go to this one also?
Yeah, webinar is streaming on custom live.
Okay.
ಈಗ ಅದನ್ನ ನೀವು ಇದು ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡಿ. ಇದನ್ನ ಇದು ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮಿನಿಮೈಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡಿ. ಇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಆಟೋಮ್ಯಾಟಿಕಲಿ ಬಿ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡೆಡ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ದಿಸ್ ಒನ್.
ಓಕೆ. ಸೊ
ಆಮೇಲೆ ಇದು ಆಟೋಮ್ಯಾಟಿಕ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ತಾನೇ ನಿಮ್ದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ? ಇಟ್ಸ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲ?
ರೆಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್. yes sir, yes sir, yes sir.
It is recording. ನನಗೂ ಕಾಣ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್. So it's live streaming also.
Yeah, I can see people are still joining. So on Zoom, I'm not sure about YouTube. So we give 2 more minutes and I'll hand over to Dr. Ganeshan in 2 minutes.
Ganeshan alla sir.
Dr. G. Gopalakrishnan, sorry. Professor Gopalakrishnan, GGK. Avuru Ganeshan Gopalakrishnan.
Yes.
He's also Ganeshan Gopalakrishnan.
Yes.
Dr. Chandrasekhar, namaste sir. We've heard about you so much. We've not met personally, yesterday, sir.
See, we are meeting on the virtual world now.
Yes,
Virtual world. That's great.
Okay, this is a message for all the participants, attendees. We're still waiting for people to join. I can see people still trying to join. I can see numbers going up slowly. So welcome you all. Give 2 more minutes, sir. We'll give 2 more minutes. Okay, let's make a start. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Telearogya webinar series. I'm Vijay Harbishata, one of the coordinators, consultant psychiatrist and coordinator, one of the coordinators for this Telearogya webinar series. In today's series, we have today's session is on psychodermatology. We'll see what is the scope for this psychodermatology. We have 2 eminent speakers who will be introduced by Professor G. Gopalakrishnan. There may be a possibility that Dr. Munoli may not be able to join because of some family emergency, but if it's possible for him to attend, he'll attend. Otherwise, one of us will go through his slides and help you provide as much information as possible. So just to give ground rules, there is, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a chat box where you can put comments in, and please direct all your questions in the Q&A section. Q&A box, and the questions from Q&A box will be taken up by our chairperson, Professor G. Gopalakrishnan. And please put your name next to the question and also the specialty you're working in, as well as a place where you're coming from. It will help us identify you and also get back if possible. With this small introduction, I'll hand over this session to Dr. G. Gopalakrishnan. To introduce Dr. G. Gopalakrishnan, he's 1 second. He's a professor and head of the Department of Psychiatry at MVJ Medical College. He has authored several publications, and also he has been a PhD supervisor in NIMANS and many other institutes. And he's a very honored and eminent psychiatrist we have, and he has supported a lot of our conferences and CMEs. So with this small introduction, I'll hand over to Professor G. Gopalakrishnan. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to participate in telearcheo, which I've been doing it as a listener for so many days. It's wonderful to see. The topic is quite interesting, and the speakers are more interesting in terms of what we need to do about psychodermatology. Very often you would have seen the psychiatry and the dermatology departments are very nearby in most of the medical colleges that I've seen from when I did medicine 40 years ago. The reason is the mind has always its inputs to other places in the same person. Nothing exists without mind, and I'm sure dermatology is no exception. Just like psychoimmunology, psychodermatology is very interesting. It's an upcoming field. And every dermatologist would see 30 to 40% of their patients seeking treatment would have an underlying psychiatric or a psychological problem. It can be a cause, it can be an effect. Skin reacts much faster to most problems of the mind. The course of the skin disease being chronic would also be affected by the stress and the psychological events that goes through. We know the taboos associated, the stigma associated with many disorders, and then the cosmetology, the look of a person changes, and that produces a lot of profound psychological morbidity. So I'm sure you will find the psychodermatology quite interesting. We have two wonderful speakers. I would like to first introduce Dr. B.S. Chandrasekhar. Hi, sir. Dr. Chandrasekhar is a very famous dermatologist of Bangalore, and he is a gold medalist from Mysore University, and has had number of publications. He runs a cutis clinic in Bangalore, and he trains a lot of young people, and he does 25,000 dermatological procedures per annum, which is great. And he's been past president of the Karnataka IADVL in 2017. And he has also been the scientific chairperson of the Dermacon International in 2019, has had number of clinical drug trials associated, and is affiliated, and many of the fellowships that he offered associated with the Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences. It's nice to hear him. And Dr. Chandrasekhar has a wonderful presentation I'm able to see through, and I'm sure you will find it very interesting. Dr. Chandrasekhar, please.
Thanks, sir. Good evening to everyone. I'm going to share my screen on my presentation. You know that, as sir said, the connection between the skin and mind is really, really virtual, and it's real in scenario. Once our dermatology started developing into a cosmetology as an offshoot. The dermatology, if you look into that in 2005, 2006 prior, not much of importance was given. It was only a specialty with ointment, creams, some tablets. But when the cosmetology entered into the field of dermatology, when a dermatosurgery entered into the field of dermatology, a lot of cosmetic procedures are being done to lift the face, to tighten the body, to give you feathers, to grow hair, to do a transplant. We have started seeing more of psychological issues in our patients, especially the body dysmorphic phobia. That particular issue is haunting every cosmetologist who practices cosmetology, every dermatosurgeon who practices dermatosurgery, especially hair transplant. In that connection, I thank Dr. Vijay to come out with such a concept of psychodermatology webinar, probably which will be useful not only from the perspective of dermatologists, but also from the perspective of psychiatrists, but also from the perspective of people who see a psychodermatology as one specialty, a combined specialty, and give much more care to our patients. So as I said, it's a connection between mind and skin, psychodermatology and campus. As sir said, even our experience, 30 to 40% of our patients who take treatment for a common skin disease or come for a cosmetology requirement, they do have some component of emotional aspect or a depression or an anxiety associated with that. Of course, you know that disfiguring dermatology, see, dermatology is a visual specialty. The moment you stand in front of a person, your aura of appearance itself speaks for you. So people want to look good, they want to look smart. It's an inherent character of a human mind, human being. It has to be like that. Because there are so many dermatological conditions which can disfigure you, especially acne, baldness, all these things. There is a component of emotional aspect or depression or anxiety, whatever my specialists are going to talk after my presentation. What are the interactions? Principally, you look at interaction between the mind and skin. You have four important things to note. Number one, primarily cutaneous disorders like a psoriasis or an atopic dermatitis is influenced by the psychological factors. We also know that when a patient gets depressed, when the patient gets worried, these conditions flare up, they blow up. The second category is primary psychiatric diseases presenting to dermatologists. For example, I told you body dysmorphic disorder, even a simple acne could bother the patient so much, but they come with the help of a dermatologist. Psychiatric illness developing as a result of skin disease, especially I told you about depression and anxiety. And the fourth is comorbidity of skin disease with another psychiatric disorder. For example, an alcoholism or some other psychiatric disorder presenting, or some other habitual disorder presenting as a skin disease. See, there is something like that. As a dermatologist, when I see my patient, I identify there is some disorder, there is some anxiety, some depression, or some over expression of this patient. I need to have something extra to my routine dermatological treatment. So this particular attitude of dermatologists across the globe, especially the study was done, if you can go through that study, if you ask a specific question, have you got a clear understanding of psychodermatology? Only 16% would tell there's a clear understanding. The rest of the dermatologists practicing, not only in the globe, even in India, they want to have some extra knowledge about it. The second question is that, have you got any experience with the psychodermatology? Yes, frequent and somewhat is up to an extent of 80%. That means there is somewhere that a dermatologist or a venereologist or a both would be addressing some issues in their chamber with the patient. The third question is important, level of comfort in treating. I tell you that promptly, when a patient comes with such a disorder with a psychiatric background, and we have so much of depression because of psoriasis or atopic dermatitis, how much ever of counseling I do to them, it's insufficient. I'm not able to do a justice to that patient. So that question, with the comfortness of your patient who has got a psychiatric background or a psychological background with your existing disease, when it is assessed, yes, doctors have said, yes, they have this. They are not very, very comfortable in treating this entirely. And the fourth question is not, have you attended any psychodermatology session? Of course, as a dermatologist, in our conferences, there will be one session, psychiatrist is invited to speak. I don't know what justice a psychiatrist can do in a given 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They will not be able to fulfill the justice. So this kind of workshops and CMEs are order of the day to develop a psychodermatology. What about it? Stigma, situation of an individual who is disqualified from the full social acceptance. That is the meaning of it. Probably, if you look into various aspects of stigma, dermatologically, when you have congenital nevi like port wine stain, melanocytic hairy nevus, or acquired deformities like neurofibromatosis, tuberous sclerosis, widespread inflammatory, if the whole body is scaling, is the whole body of erythematous of atopic dermatitis or a psoriasis, the patient has got the stigma to go out to mingle with the society. Then probably a surgical, post-traumatic defects, etc. Stigma due to psychiatric disease and learning disabilities, race and religion, behavioral and social factors like alcoholism, substance misuse. But the interventions in dermatological stigmata are concentrated on dermatologically, you need to reduce the visibility, and psychologically, you need to support the emotion. This is how we have to deal with that. How do you classify psychodermatology conditions? Delusional beliefs, OCDs, eating disorders, psychogenic itch, very, very important. I'm going to discuss fractious skin disease, deliberate self. Throughout my presentation, I'm going to give a dermatological perspective of the patient. I'm not going to touch about the psychological perspective. of course, touch on, but treatment aspect, advice aspect, I'm leaving it to my psychiatric friends to tell about it to us. In delusional belief, we have delusion of infestation, olfactory delusion, and Morgellons syndrome. Then in OCD, we have body dysmorphic disorder, lichen simplex chronicus, which is called a neurodermatitis, skin picking disorder, acne excori, very, very common, trichotillomania, pulling of the hair, onychotillomania, biting of the nails, and health anxieties like dirt, phobias, venenophobia, wart phobia, infection phobia, COVID phobia. Yeah, these are all the phobias we have and we are running. In eating disorder, we have another, of course, directly they may not have any obvious condition, but because of their condition of eating and taking it out, the skin suffers in the form of dryness. And psychogenic itch is very, very important. We would like to have a detailed discussion on this to learn how best we can go ahead with this patient. Similarly, factitious skin disease like dermatitis artifacta, simulata, passivata, malingering, pseudologia fantastica, then the Munchausen syndrome, then fabricated and induced illness. Deliberate self-harm, like with a suicidal ideation without that. Others like cutaneous disease with alcohol misuse, depression in dermatological patients, suicide. So this is a broad category of patients whom a dermatologist or a cosmetologist or a dermatosurgeon sees nowadays. In that, the delusional belief, we know that it's an uncommon but very disabling condition where the patient is convinced that he or she is infested with a mite or a parasite or a bacteria, or even now, you hear that a lot of patients, the moment they get cough, the moment they get the fever, they get this phobia of COVID. It is so worse that they don't want to go on test. They don't want to keep quiet. So this is what is all phobia about. Then clinical features of these phobia is itching, biting, burning. Especially they tell about crawling sensation, and they bring something like this, a jar, collecting some materials, telling that this is an insect, this is something, this is biting me, like that. You can see the excoriations here, these patients. They have these sensations, maybe intermittent, more often persistent and disabling. This is some of the photographs where the patient has this kind of excoriation mark. The moment we see this, we do suspect that this patient has got a background of psychiatric illness. Olfactory delusions, very common. They're called cacosmia or phantosmia. Of course, it's more common in young male adults. Probably they would have depression or obsessive compulsive disorders, body dysmorphic disease, dementia, and temporal lobe epilepsy. But not only, when you see an olfactory delusion, you should also think about differential diagnosis. You cannot just put a stamp that this is something which has got a psychiatric background. So you should, genuine body odor, some people do have that. We have that bromhydrosis, then we have the olfactory. It can be there. Trimethylaminoria, probably if you give a sulfur metabolism, then the patient can have this. Temporal lobe epilepsy, patients can have it. Other organic brain diseases like dementia, Parkinson's, and brain tumor. Probably you will have to rule out an organic cause for this before you probably tell them that, or brand them as patients who have got a psychiatric illness. This is Morgellons syndrome. The phenomena comprises of sensation of crawling, stinging, and biting under the skin. Those that do not heal, the fiber-like filaments they find, joint and muscle pain, debilitating fatigue. I think we'll see the photograph. This is what the patient brings, or what the patient has got on the skin. Some threads, some material, they always tell that something is happening in their skin. In OCD, of course, it's a dysmorphophobia or a dermatological non-disease, we call it as, because we don't see any lesions on the skin in these patients. Of course, it's differently from the cosmetic patients. They behave differently, which I'm going to tell. This is about the psychological body image, the patients who come with dermatosurgery and cosmetology. Patient is preoccupied with distressed with an imagined defect or appearance of an excessive concern over a trivial defect. The defect is very, very small. A simple one acne spot. I have patients, even evening I saw one patient who has got a normal pores on the skin around the nose, but he says it's a big problem for him. He wants to become a model. I repeatedly counseled him that no, this is normal. You are body. So such patients do come to us. Of course, you should also think about the organic disorder. This is what is all about. This is a small acne. The patient is so worried and looking into the mirror again and again and showing it. Most patients are females in their 30s. These patients are rich in symptoms and while poor in signs of organic skin disease. Very rich in symptoms. Women present with complaints related to mainly face, breast, hair, nose, stomach, while men present with their problem with genitals, the body and nose here, etc., and their physique as such, the male come with a physique problem. They repeatedly undergo procedures to find solution for their flaws. But remember, this is what we see as dermatologists. Majority are dissatisfied with the results and consultation. They do not believe. They take a lot of time with us. Of course, we do spend a lot of time with them, but ultimately after 30 to 40 minutes of discussions, offering them ways of treatment, still they feel that they are not satisfied. So this is what exactly we want to learn from you. Suicidal ideation and suicidal attempts common in BDD patients. There are two types of BDD, one with insight and those without. Often those without insight are also diagnosed with the delusional disorder or somatic type. Most difficult task is to shift the focus from the primary dermatological illness to the one that requires psychiatric treatment. It's a very double-edged weapon for us. When to refer, how to refer, what are the signs you should collect or you should observe or you should be able to recognize in such a patient when I'm sending it to a psychiatrist. This is called neurodermatitis, very simple disease. Of course, this is the photograph I am showing you. This is how the patient of neurodermatitis comes. Of course, with a topical steroid treatment and emollient, that disease really responds well. The problem is that again the patient shows up after about maybe 1.5 months of treatment success, they come back again. And again you put a steroid and this is a vicious cycle. But somewhere down the line, probably these patients have got that neurotic component for the dermatitis. That's why it's called as neurodermatitis. Skin picking disorder called dermatillomania, where they continue to pick their skin. This is a classical clinical example. Acute excoriations and chronic scarred atrophic lesions. This is how they start picking. Majority of the patients which come with skin pricking is very difficult to treat. Of course, we need the help there. Acne excoriae is one more common problem in young adults. This is how the patient starts picking their acne very badly. Of course, what is the treatment of choice? This is after treatment. The photograph, what you see here is after treatment. What I normally tell my colleagues and my students that you stop getting acne. You make the patient to stop getting acne. Probably they will not put their fingers there. So most of the time, such patients we do isotretinoin where they completely dissolve the acne. But nevertheless, even at 2 or 3 acne, they start picking up. This is called acne excoriae. This is how the patient presented and this is how she was treated. Then trichotillomania, hair pulling disorder, very common. This is a clinical photograph of it. You can see the patient starts. It's a short, irregular, broken and distorted hair. You can see plucking activity is centrifugal. They start from one point, they pull it off. Then they go to another point, they pull it off. Again, the hair grows here, they pull it off. This is trichotillomania. Of course, when they start eating that hair, you call it as trichobizarre. When they start eating and eating, this is what happens. This is you can see an endoscopic view of trichobizarre, the ball of hair. This is how it happens when they start eating. They take the stomach, the image of the stomach and the intestine called Rapunzel syndrome. These are the sequelae. Sometimes you need to investigate these patients. Probably most of the time, but it's clinical, we can make out immediately. Even our dermoscopy comes into very, very useful to pick up these patients of trichotillomania. Similarly, onychotillomania, where they start biting their nails. Eating disorders, of course, you have bulimia nervosa and anorexia. As at beginning, I told these conditions, probably they present secondary. Probably they will have, because of their nutritional problem, nutritional defect, they get cirrhosis and pruritus. It's once called Russell side, where this is one of the indicative of this is bulimia or anorexia. They start biting their knuckles. Probably it's easy to recognize. Then, of course, they can have nutritional disease like anemia, enteropathica, whatever it is. Cutaneous microvascular, they can have Raynaud's phenomena, cyanosis, hair abnormalities like hypertrichosis and hair loss. The most challenging situation for a dermatologist is pruritus. Pruritus of unknown origin. When you say PUO, it's pyrexia of unknown origin for physicians and general practitioners. When you have PUO, it's called pruritus of unknown origin for a dermatologist. Very, very distancing condition. The patient comes, we see that we don't find any signs except excoriations on the entire body. Of course, we try to rule out all invisible causes of pruritus like malignancy, all those things, but everything is normal. The patient still excoriates, still itches badly. So that is called psychogenic pruritus. Of course, these are the criteria to diagnose psychogenic pruritus. There are two types there, compulsive and impulsive type. In compulsive, the skin excoriation performed to avoid anxiety or to prevent a dreaded event elicited by obsession. Executed in full awareness, they are very conscious when they are scratching. Associated with some resistance to behavior therapy or behavioral disorder. The impulsive type, the skin excoriation linked with arousal, pleasure, or reduction of tension. Executed at times with minimal awareness. Probably they do not know what they are doing. That is called impulsive type, and of course, you have a mixed type always. The pruritic episodes in these patients are unpredictable with abrupt onset and termination, predominantly occurring at the time of relaxation. Probably it is most worst during night time. Especially in elderly people, it is worst after they take bath in the morning, they have their breakfast, they have their walk, and they sit, they start scratching. The commonest sites of predilection are legs, wherever the area which is accessible, there they scratch. Sometimes we see a lot of excoriation and thickening of the scrotal skin in these patients. Often there is history of a major psychological stress preceding. There's a significant number of patients have associated anxiety or depression. In factitious skin disease, of course, it's classified as DSM-5. It's a falsification of physical or psychological signs and symptoms. There are, of course, different disorders in this. I'll go to that. These are the disorders which are listed, like dermatitis artifacta, which is normally we see. We'll go to the photographs of these patients. It's easy to recognize. This is one of our patients. See how badly she has got producer factitious. This took around 1 year for us, with the help of an ophthalmic surgeon, to bring this patient to this particular level. This patient came 15 days back, again started doing this. In spite of hours of interrogation with her, she never tells that I am going to put my nail or a finger. Even their family members do not support it. But organically, we did not find any skin disease which can produce this kind of scar or this kind of factitious dermatitis. We put our heart and brain and mind to do this. But again, 15 days back, she comes with this again. So these are the areas where we really need help. These are some of the excoriations from other patients in the literature. This is, you can see, called a drip site. You can see the serum coming down. And this is a non-healing wound. They never allow the wound to heal at all. Factitious dermatitis. These are the clinical variants of factitious dermatitis, like cheilitis when it involves lips, nail disease, hair artifact, witchcraft, constriction artifact, all these. This is the lip cheilitis, you can see, factitious cheilitis. This is the factitious nail disease, biting, destroying the nail. This is a dermatitis simulator. They have applied probably a glue to simulate a disease called herpes zoster, probably to overcome their anxiety or to have an attention-seeking disorder. This is a dermatitis passivator. I don't know why they don't. Normally, it is found on the chest and back in Indian patients, but this is an international patient. Probably it's simply that they don't remove, they don't want the secretions to go with a routine hygiene. There is a fabricated and induced illness. This is Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where the illness in a child is fabricated by the parent or usually the mother. The most common presentations: bleeding and bruising, central nervous system depression, apnea, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, etc. Deliberate self-harm, you have two deliberate things, one with suicidal ideation and without suicidal ideation. Self-mutilating behavior is often grouped with other behaviors such as self-poisoning, attempted hanging, all this. Without suicidal intent, it is a self-injurious behavior or self-mutilating occurring outside the conscious suicidal ideation. So this is to complete the presentation. And very important at this particular juncture, when we are looking into a combination of psychiatry with a dermatology called psychodermatology, and this is what structure model probably we can adopt. Once this discussion gets over, probably we can have some interaction between us or between the departments to have this interaction and correlation. Probably these are classified into general interdisciplinary clinic, where you have a psychiatry, dermatology, then the specialized clinic where acute is like a specialized clinic, the dermatology center having a psychiatrist as a consultant coming in, or having a psychodermatology department working at least weekly once or twice or 3 times depending on the inputs we have. The teaching clinic like a medical college, the pediatric clinic where most of the time we have to counsel both the patient, both the child as well as the parents. The parents require more counseling. To give a simple example, a molluscum contagiosum viral disease, when it comes, our child is not bothered about it at all. The parents are bothered so much. So similarly, a simple issues like a simple patch of alopecia areata, a small patch of vitiligo, it bothers them so much that you require counsel those parents. Probably this is what is pediatric clinic requires in dermatology, and independent assessment clinic. So this is both you have a pharmacological treatment probably given by the specialist dermatologist, and a non-pharmacological psychotherapy or psychiatric treatment given by a psychiatrist. This is from me. I've highlighted what are the dermatological conditions which require a psychiatric help and how they are presented. I did not go into the details of pathomechanism because I requested Ravindra to speak on that. Probably you would be a better speaker than us because you know the connection between the mind and skin. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the next presentation. Thank you so much.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful presentation of the skin conditions, which are telltale signs, and the way that with cosmetology has experiencing the need for a psychiatrist, more so in metros, and people are becoming more and more aware of what's happening and what they need to do. But alas, as you said, PUO, this kind of stuff, makes everybody very, very nervous, and people are too anxious and they need help. As you said, there's need for psychological problems to be evaluated and must be treated effectively so that the patient will get, and you said the last patient that you were showing, that after all that you were able to do, to come back again with a similar kind of problem, you're not able to explain organicity. Probably you should look for psychological methods of handling the whole stuff. I'm sure there may be a lot of questions from the people who are looking at your lecture, and I'm sure we will wait till the next presentation because we know what are the problems, but the problem is we need to know what needs to do. The next is we will take up the psychological issues, and after this presentation probably.
Sir, can we welcome Dr. Jagdish, sir?
Yes, please.
Right. We welcome
to Jagdish.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Sir, you can unmute and speak, sir.
Good evening. We had a wonderful speaker, Dr. Chandrasekhar, not only an excellent clinician in Bangalore and across the country, a good teacher and a researcher, and his presentation was quite lucid. I just request at the end, probably he will also throw some light on alopecia areata and androgenetic alopecia, because these are the other 2 chronic conditions where our depression and their alopecia go hand in hand, and unless we treat this, they don't recover, or whether alopecia came first or depression came first, or depressive patients have the high risk. It's a bidirectional one. So that's one area probably Dr. Chandrasekhar can cover it at the end for 2 to 5 minutes, because where both of us have to join hands to work together. Otherwise, I have associated with him for a long time and is an excellent clinician, and it was a very lucid presentation. I hope Dr. Vijay will start with that psychiatric aspect of it. We will all join to see that how we can make this a very enriching experience today. So,
sir, Dr. Ravindra is yet to join, sir. Actually, you can take this question now only till he joins in, sir.
Yeah, that's very
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yes. But I don't see on the box any questions. You're welcome.
Dr. Jagdish had a question, so we could take it.
Yeah, we'll start with Jagdish. The cause and the effect with alopecia areata, and then, yes, please. Dr. Chandrasekhar?
Yes, sir. These are the 2 areas which really require assistance from the psychiatrist for us. The problem is that when you take alopecia areata as such, 85% of the time alopecia areata heals by itself. There's no problem with that. Another 15% of the patients will have extensive disease. Alopecia areata is divided into a single patch, multifocal alopecia, alopecia totalis when you lose hair from the scalp, alopecia universalis when you lose hair from the eyebrows and the entire body along with the scalp. It is not that only patients who have got alopecia totalis or alopecia universalis have a problem. Even single or two, three patches of alopecia areata, it creates so much of anxiety and tension in these patients that they come running, they have tears in their eyes, and they, even if the child, the parents come and they tell that, doctor, what is going to happen? See, the greatest problem nowadays after the revolution of internet is that before they come to us, they see, and the internet, I don't know, I should ask Dr. Jagdish, the human mind always picks up the bad things first, then the good things.
True. That's why we call it as the idiot syndrome. Internet derived obstruction
Yes,
in the internet.
they don't look into the success stories of alopecia areata patients. They look into a bad story of alopecia patients where they're not. See, there are areas where even the most advanced treatment like tofacitinib or whatever we offer, patients are not going to grow the hair back, or if they grow it, they lose it. From a dermatology perspective, I know that when it comes to alopecia totalis, alopecia universalis, the success rate would be around only about 10 to 12%. I know about it. See, the consciousness as a dermatologist, I just want to ask Dr. Jagdish, sir, a conscious dermatologist, I know that my treatment is going to work in 10 to 12% of the patients. My attempt has been done. The patient has grown hair and they have lost back because the effect of the steroids or the effect of the methotrexate, effect of cyclosporine or tofacitinib has gone. Whether are we justified in treating these patients with so much of drugs which causes side effects, which has no definitive, prospective with respect to their permanent cure? How to talk to the patients in this scenario, sir? How to counsel them?
It's a big challenge. I personally feel giving psychoeducation is the first thing. We have to make them to accept there is no shortcut nor a cure for this. Especially, I have seen one child recently, 6 years, and she's refusing to go out because multifocal alopecia patches are there, and parents are trying to cover with all the hair still. So, in that age, the child is difficult to accept that. But once they are above 18 years, it is always desirable to make them understand. But what I have gone through the literature is, depression is also very common with this AA and AGA. So by giving them a benefit of doubt with an SSRI like sertraline, and that's the first drug of choice, which is literature says. So by treating with a small dose of tablet, they are the patients who keep shopping doctors. The moment first instantly we tell them you accept this, etc., they go to another dermatologist. They keep shopping dermatologists. They come back because again, in the market. So I personally feel first itself, we have to educate them to accept this, and it's going to be a long battle. It's not going to be a short one. So people can have regrowth. They can have again fall. We don't know. So gradually over multiple consultations, we need to educate, make them to accept. Once they accept, even the extension of that lesion comes down. And if required, if they have a syndrome of depression, it is desirable to treat them with sertraline or any other SSRI. They do well.
Sir, is there any cutoff age for sertraline, sir, as such? Because we see children with these.
No, nothing. Not sure. Not very much.
Okay.
That can be given from young to old. This is one safest SSRI which can be given. Only thing in children, we have to start with a very small dose and then above the age of 10. So even elderly people also.
I've given.
In elderly, probably we have to keep the hyponatremia in the corner of our mind and treat them adequately.
Okay. So hyponatremia has to be kept. So you mean to say that over a period of time when you give repeated consultation, you need to tune the patient for reality?
Make them to accept the reality.
Accept the reality over a period of time, because you cannot tell them over that, you cannot bluntly tell that this is not going to happen, or what is that, you will have to use wig. See, this is the kind of patients who come and tell, doctor, I went there, they suddenly said that you use a wig. We can't do anything. That approach is not required. It should not be done in these cases, correct, sir?
No, obviously, because it's very difficult for anybody to grasp something which is very blunt, and because it's something like even for a COVID test, just going for a COVID test makes you anxious. Leave alone whether you have a problem or not. So I think, as you said, people have already gone through the internet before coming to you. So I'm sure they are already anxious. There are more triggers available already in society, and more so with cosmetic issues. Whether it's a young person or an old person or a middle-aged person, everyone has a problem. And then there are most often psychological issues, either as a cause or an effect. People do take drugs, people do take other substances. People also consult you for, like you said, to go to a plastic surgeon for a change of the facial requirements. So I think that is also, see, people and the dysmorphophobia, factious disorder, so many things. People have that large number, the overlap between the two. That's why I said, nearly 40% of the patients would have psychological issues, either before or after, because you're dealing with a chronic condition and you're unable to accept reality. That depends on the personality of the person. And there are some associations, yes.
Do you think the pharmacological therapy would assist them to accept it?
Very much.
Is that the way we think when we give sertraline or metazepam or something like that?
Of course, the problem is just to be seen. Pharmacological and non-pharmacological have to be together to achieve best results and give a better quality of life. To believe what you need to believe, it takes a lot of time. No, it doesn't, as Dr. Jagdish has already told you, that probably you have to keep seeing the person again and again, which I think dermatologists do and psychiatrists also do. It's a matter of time, because accepting reality is not a joke. You can just understand intellectually, but emotionally acceptance, it takes a long stuff for people.
Okay.
Yeah, GGK sir, sorry to interrupt you. Dr. Munori has joined. You can introduce and he can take over, sir.
Sure.
Munori, so you can introduce him, sir. Yeah. Can you share your screen, Dr. Munori? Yeah. Sir, you can introduce Dr. Munori, sir.
Yep.
GGK sir. Yeah.
Yeah. Dr.
You can unmute. You can unmute, Dr. Ravindra. You can unmute.
So it's nice to welcome Dr.
Yeah, you are audible. Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir, you are audible.
Dr. Ravindra Manoli is welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Though it's late, but I think it's wonderful because we have an interesting program right up, and there are people with lots of things to know about psychological issues. And Ravindra Manoli, to introduce, I think is one of the best students of KMC, having had a gold medal from the same place, and currently being an associate professor with a special interest in psychodermatology. I'm sure I've gone through the slides, and I'm sure you're going to give a wonderful presentation in terms of what we need to know, the cause and the effect, and what is a biological and what is psychological, and where do we play a psychiatrist role in terms of caring of these people who have problems, and then they have to accept reality. Please go ahead, Dr. Ravindra.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the introduction. Sorry, I'm a bit late.
Just check audio, please.
The title which was is it? Sir.
No, this is some issue with the audio, Dr. Ravindra. Some issue with the audio.
Yeah,
that's a local network issue. I think there is a problem.
Dr. Ravindra.
Dr. Ravindra, I would suggest one thing. If you have this issue, you can shut off the video and then continue with the audio.
I can.
Yes.
I can.
Yes, sir. I can do that.
Or if you have any problem, you can come on the phone. I can share the screen. Don't worry.
Now, sir, how
are you able to share the screen?
Sir? Yeah.
No, sir. No.
Okay,
no.
shall I go?
Yeah, you can use the phone. I can share the screen and sort it out. So you can come off. You can stop sharing.
Okay, sir.
You can stop sharing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yes, sir. So am I audible now, sir?
Can you come on phone, please?
Okay, sir.
Now that's clear.
Yeah. Can you come on phone, please?
Yes, sir. We'll do that, sir.
Yeah. So can you see the screen also?
Yes, sir. Sir, am I audible here, or should I shut it off and I'll come on phone?
You're audible.
You're audible,
Audibility is
yeah.
good. Audibility is good now.
Okay, sir. So then I can begin, sir. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
So,
Go
so you
ahead,
can
please.
tell me I'm sharing my screen your screens, your slides rather.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Good evening. Sorry for the delay. Okay, so this is my outline. Just I want to tell a little bit about skin and psyche, and I would like to talk about the pathophysiology of how these things happen, and what we need to be aware of. Since it's a mixed audience about psychiatrists and dermatologists, so we'll try to touch both the areas as much as possible. Yes, sir. Next slide. Yeah, as we all know, the development of right from the embryo. So the ectoderm is one which gets differentiated into skin, neurons of the brain, and subsequently pigment cells. So from here we can trace the common origin of the psychodermatology. So this is what is the rationale for which we explain it to our patients also. The something which affects skin, which is going to affect the psyche also, and it's a vice versa. So skin is not a separate entity. It is a part of neuroimmunocutaneous and endocrine system. All these days we know that there is a neurology, immunology, and endocrine system. But we need to add cutaneous system also to this thing, because stress can induce or exacerbate many dermatological conditions also. Next slide. Yeah, because we know skin is innervated by sensory C fibers, whose free nerve endings contain neuropeptides, substance P, calcitonin gene-related peptide. So what we see exactly is there, because of the stress, there are some products in the cutaneous nerve endings. So these will elicit neurogenic cutaneous inflammatory response. This is one of the basic pathology which we are going to see in the patients with dermatological conditions. Next slide, sir. So couple of the end products are substance P. So how it's going to act, or how it's going to cause problems are, it's going to activate keratinocytes, proliferation and secretion of inflammatory mediates, interleukin 1 and nerve growth factor. Because nowadays there is a lot of talk about immune response because of COVID situation, and also we are talking about the cytokine storm, etc. So remember, this is also one of the important component in psychodermatology. Subsequently, there is activation of mast cells. As we all know, these are going to release histamine. Histamine, again, very important in dermatology, because at times during internship we used to joke like anything in dermatology is equal to histamine. We just give an antihistaminic, things are going to subside. Okay, so that was our notion at some time ago. But this is one of the basic pathophysiology. So which is an mediator of erythema, edema, and pain. Next slide, sir. Yeah, second one is calcitonin gene-related peptide. Again, it is going to mediate erythema. It induces keratinocyte and melanocyte proliferation. It potentiates the activity of substance P, which is going to cause problem in pain, etc. Then it's going to inhibit Langerhans cells of the skin. So it is something like a macrophages of the skin, which are going to engulf the unwanted, what we, in a simpler term, what we call germs or etc., and going to protect the skin. But CGRP is going to inhibit that. Next slide. NGF, yeah, keratinocyte and mast cell proliferation is one of the important role. Again, it's going to induce mast cell regranulation. Then histamine release will happen. Again, it's going to act by immunomodulator also. Next slide. Yeah, this is one of the diagram which can summarize everything. Okay, stress, either external, internal from the cortical region, which is going to stimulate hypothalamus. Okay, from there it's going to come via pituitary ACTH. It's going to reach till adrenal gland. Then it's going to release norepinephrine and cortisol. Subsequently, thymus is there. Then TH1 and TH2 response is going to be seen. Ultimately, we are going to see interleukins. Okay, some will get promoted, some will get inhibited, rather activated and inhibited. Finally, what we see end result is inflammation. Okay, that's the immediate response. There is also a delayed response also, which is going to happen. Next slide, sir. Again, same picture. It is different. Next slide. Yeah, when we talk about stress, there are two varieties. One is acute stress. That is something which acutely we are going to encounter. Subsequently, there is a chronic stress in the sense like there is a coronary condition which is ongoing for a longer time. So acute pre-stress, it enhances the delay type hypersensitivity and humoral immunity. So that is because of corticosteroid and epinephrine. There is increase in TLC, CD8 cells, NK cells, CD4, CD8 ratio is going to alter. It favors the production of cytokine interferon gamma. These in turn are going to break the barrier of skin or the protective barrier of the skin. Next slide, sir. Chronic stress, again, it's going to act along the same lines. Important to note here is it's going to decrease CD4 cells, okay? Ratio of CD4 CD8 cells is going to get altered. Subsequently, all the cells which are required for protection are going to get damaged. Next slide, sir. As I mentioned, stress is going to alter skin barrier function. So subsequently, it is susceptible for infection. Simple example is all of us have gone through during the exam time. We are going to see many students with herpes infection, or there are ulcers or pustules or vesicles along the corner of or angle of the mouth. So that's again stress induced because stress is going to damage the protective barrier of the skin. Next slide, sir. Same thing again represented in a different manner. We can go on, sir. Next one. Yeah, now we ask for evidence. What is the evidence that these things are going to really alter or affect the person's existing dermatological condition? So this is one of the study which has come up with. So there are emotional triggers which can worsen, or the triggers which can bring forward the existing dermatological conditions. So here you can see diagnosis, then proportion with emotional trigger and biological incubation period. That is after how many days of the stress or after how many hours of the stress you are going to see these changes. Hyperhidrosis, lichen simplex chronicus, rosacea, dyshidrosis, atopic dermatitis, urticaria, psoriasis. You can see most of the common things which are there, which are encountered by dermatologists day in and day out, are going to get affected with the stress. Okay, so next slide. Yeah, this is one more type of classification where we try to link between psychiatry and dermatology from various angles. Psychodermatological conditions, either they can be psychophysiological disorders, or they can be primary psychiatric disorders, or they can be secondary psychiatric disorders, cutaneous sensory disorders, or last part is about the use of psychotropics purely for dermatological conditions. Next slide, sir. Yeah, I think Chandrasekhar sir might have told all these things. So just tell a little bit one line about these things. Psychophysiological disorders are nothing but these are bona fide skin disorders in which skin disorder is exacerbated by stress. That is, already there is an existing skin disorder which is going to worsen because of the stress. Next slide, sir. So these are another classification, primary psychiatric disorders. So in which here we can see the classification is there: factitious disorder, dermatosis result of psychosis like delusions, somatoform disorders, or as a result of compulsive disorders. So these are certain examples which have already been mentioned, I believe. So I think I can skip this one, sir, these things. Next one, sir. Next one, sir. Next, sir. Next, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, this is, yes, sir, psychological adverse effects of medication. So which this one we wanted to highlight because of many medications which are used either in dermatology or medicine or various other disciplines are going to lead to certain problems. So we need to be aware of, rather even the treating our colleagues have to be aware of. So one of the thing is corticosteroids, which are commonly used. They are going to cause psychosis, delirium, depression, etc. Then there are antihistamines. They themselves are can lead to hallucinations or confusion or delirium state also. Even antivirals, there are chances like the person may end up with some psychiatric disorders. Isotretinoin is one more. Depression and suicidality is well-known factor with that. Next one, sir. Yeah, cutaneous sensory disorders. As the name itself will indicate, unpleasant sensation on the skin, such as itching, burning, stinging, crawling, biting. So, won't be any apparent organic etiology as such. So, what we call them as dermatological equivalents to chronic pain syndrome. Like we have somatoform disorders or somatoform pain disorders. This will be there. I think there was one query where they asked to describe about secondary psychiatric disorder. So I'll just tell about it. Secondary psychiatric disorders are nothing but there are psychological problems as a result of having a skin disease. In the sense, there is already existing skin disease. Because of that, there are secondary psychological problems. In the sense, it can be a comorbidity. For example, person has psoriasis or acne or urticaria. So there may be depression. It can be a comorbidity, or it can be a reaction to dermatosis. In the sense, because of disfigurement, or because of discrimination, because of social isolation, stigma. So in cases like vitiligo, alopecia, hemangiomas. So as a reaction to these conditions, the person may have a psychiatric disorder. It can be adjustment disorder, depression, or these can be treatment emergent. So these three conditions, either as comorbidity or as a reaction to skin condition or as a treatment emergent psychiatric problems, when they are going to be labeled as secondary psychiatric disorders. Okay, sir. Next one, sir. Yeah, common psychopathologies underlying psychodermatological disorders. So this is the second critical step when we are ascertaining a psychodermatological case. First one is like we are trying to fit in one of the things. Second is whether the person
Dr. Ravindra?
Yes, sir. Next slide.
Yeah.
The common psychopathology which are underlying psychodermatological disorder, as I mentioned, we need to look specific. Anxiety, excessive anxiety and worry, it may revolve around valid concerns about money, jobs, marriage, etc. But what we see in patients is the anxiety is more than what is anticipated from a particular condition. So the person may complain of restlessness, feeling on the edge, palpitation, dizziness, okay, difficulty in breathing, tremulousness. So when these are there, we are going to suspect that there is underlying anxiety disorder or anxiety component, so that we need to look in. So patient report that they are going to face any difficulty easily. Okay. So they find it difficult to manage. So they will ask for certain interventions. We'll come back to interventions later, sir. We'll move on to next slide, sir. Depression. So first one is anxiety. Depression, this is one of the most frequently encountered condition. So there is a difference between syndromal depression and depression symptoms. So the person feels sad for a day or 2 days or a couple of hours or once in a while in a day, that's a just depression symptom, not a syndromal depression. When to label that person as a condition, we are going to see the person will have loss of appetite, weight loss, sleep disturbance, and preoccupied with all these things. Intervention. Next slide, sir. Yeah, delusions. So here the person has false, unshakable belief in something. Okay. For example, delusional parasitic, which we see commonly. where person feels that there are insect under my skin which are crawling, they are biting, stinging. At times they may pick the skin and they may get the skin tags. Then they will tell, okay, these are the things. So this is an insect that they may call. Next slide. Next component is obsession and compulsion. Obsession is nothing but repeated irrational intrusive thought or image. Example, person feels that, okay, my hands are dirty. I know my hands are clean, still I feel like my hands are dirty, I need to wash them. Compulsion is stereotype behavior, where I will go and wash my hands. Next slide. Yeah, next one, next slide. Okay, next we are going to have a look at one of the table. So here psychological factors which are going to affect medical conditions also. Okay, so here we have atopic dermatitis. So commonly associated thing which are seen with our stress, anxiety, depression, psoriasis, stress, anxiety, etc. So this is a whole list. So based on the various studies, various reports, these have been compiled. So if you closely look at the conditions, the commonly encountered conditions like dermatitis, psoriasis, urticaria, acne, body dysmorphic disorder, delusional parasitis, almost all of them will have psychiatric component. So as the chairperson, Dr. Gopal Krishnan sir was mentioning, almost 40% of the times you are going to see one or the other thing. So many studies have mentioned the same thing also. Next slide, please. So now the dermatologist will have a dilemma. So the slides are made in the keeping in mind of dermatologist. So what to do? Okay, so dermatologist will identify, okay, the person has some psychiatric component. The person has, I am able to identify some anxiety. So what should I do? Whether I should refer or whether I should treat, whether I am qualified enough, whether I was trained. So firstly, what we try to explain is we need to explain the biological basis and need of psychotropics, which if we feel so, because that is the one which patients are going to understand, because otherwise we have the apprehension that person may feel okay, not to he may feel bad that he is being referred to psychiatrist, etc. But when we are going to explain the basis or rationale, they are definitely going to accept the intervention. Next slide, please. So next, I will just briefly go through antidepressant, certain antipsychotic, and certain other drugs. Next slide, please. Antidepressant. So why do we need antidepressant? The question will arise. So the requirement, or there is evidence for antidepressants in these conditions: primary psychiatric disorder, secondary psychiatric disorder due to dermatosis, and treatment of psychiatric manifestation. If you closely look at the conditions, we have dermatitis artifacta, artifacta like neurotic excoriation, acne, compulsive disorders, or psychogenic pruritus, or itching without any reason, or burning sensation. Then the people who are diagnosed with psoriasis or alopecia areata, etc., or urticaria, they may have anxiety and depression. Again, we may have to prescribe antidepressant there. At times, there may be treatment emergent. For example, we are giving isotretinoin, we may have to look for depression. We may have to look for suicidality. We are giving steroid for some reason, for psoriasis or etc. We have to look for depression and psychosis. Next slide, please. So the question will come, how we are going to choose an antidepressant? So first thing is we need to be clear why we are going to start this. Then what are our target symptoms? So what is the effect? Okay, so what we are desiring as an effect. So adverse effect of the particular medicine, and also we need to keep in mind of long-term strategy. Okay, so but the uniqueness here with the antidepressants is same medication may not work in all the patients. Same medication may have different action in different group. Okay, so antidepressant of same group may act differently in the same patient. Okay. So selection of antidepressants is usually based on person's comorbidity or person's condition. These are just a rough outline. This is from the review article which we have published just last month in Indian Dermatology Online Journal. So here what we try to do is we just try to mention the doses with which we can start, and common psychiatric indications and the adverse effects. If you look at the table, we have escitalopram, which is one of the commonly used antidepressant, 10 to 30 milligram at night, start with 10 milligram and we may go up. Like, so preferably we may be able to share slide or we can send this article so that these things will be clear. Next slide, please. Yeah, second group is SNRI. So selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. We have venlafaxine, desvenlafaxine, and duloxetine. Again, these are used for depression, anxiety disorder. Duloxetine has an additional advantage of it can be used in diabetic neuropathy or chronic pain syndrome. Next slide, please. We have NDRI group, which is bupropion is there. Then we have tricyclic antidepressant, amitriptyline, clomipramine. Then doxepin, which has a very much relevance in dermatology, imipramine. Then we have mirtazapine. Next slide, please. Antipsychotics, okay, for delusional disorders, delusional parasitosis, these are the drugs of choices. We have tricyclic, first generation and second generation antipsychotics. At times, in addition to delusional parasitosis, we may use them for trichotillomania also. Pharmacological profile, okay, I just mentioned a couple of the medications like pimozide, risperidone, aripiprazole, or olanzapine. But if you look at adverse effect, the common dictum is first generation antipsychotics will lead to more of EPS related or extrapyramidal syndrome, whereas second generation antipsychotics are going to lead to more of metabolic or other problems. So this is just an overview slide, but it will be a bit confusing if I go in depth about all these things, so which can be looked at a later point of time. Yeah, next slide, please. Next one, next. Yeah, we'll come to non-pharmacological intervention because a lot of queries have been come up on this. So first thing that we are going to do is structure the doctor-patient relationship. So explain the rationale of follow-up visit. It's not like once when you are visiting, I'm giving some medicine and you are going to disappear. No. Then we need to schedule the appointment. We need to structure it, and we need to maintain separate file for therapy. So next, I can tell about how we can go ahead in sessions. So first session, we can explain the biopsychosocial model, where we are going to explain the person how dermatology and psychiatry are linked and what is the biological basis, psychological basis, and social basis for dermatological condition also. And we need to explain the role of non-pharmacological intervention as an add-on. We need to educate the person. Then we need to ensure that how the person can cope up with everyday stress so that the intraday exacerbation or variations can come down. Next slide, please. Then we tell about soothing reassurance. Okay, so to begin with, the first thing that is there with the patient is stigma, and then they feel the only one who are suffering. We can give the example, see the under prevalence is like this much in the population. Disease is unpleasant but may not be dangerous. Okay, help and treatment are available and is successful. So this will break down all the cognitive barriers, all the hindrances that the patient will have. Next slide, please. Then there are structured non-pharmacological treatment for certain conditions. So habit reversal, supportive therapy, and relaxation technique. Habit reversal mainly for trichotillomania. We'll go a little bit in depth for that. So habit reversal has following component. One is awareness training. Second is competing response. Third is habit control motivation. Next slide, please. So awareness training, it aims to make patient aware the whole behavior of chain. Okay, patient needs to be aware that how he or she starts to pull the hair. For example, patient may start touching the hair, then holding the hair for a couple of seconds or a couple of hairs, then with the stroke, the person may pull. So we need to identify risk factors also. Then second component is competing response, where patient is trained in performing movements which are similar with the pulling of hair or skin, but these are different. The person will not be pulling the hair. For example, grasping an object firmly instead of holding hairs, making fist and squeezing, squeeze a rubber ball. Okay, hold the book firmly. While watching TV, hold cushion firmly. Third one is habit control motivation. Okay, so where we need to review the records, how the patient is doing. We need to give a positive reinforcement, and we need to include family members and patients and close ones. Next slide, please. So we need to mention, we need to have a record sheet also. For example, date, when the person has done, where he has done, strength of hours, thoughts, etc., which patient has to document. Next slide, please. So next component is supportive psychotherapy. So usually patients with chronic skin conditions, they benefit a lot with this. So supportive psychotherapy common components can be where we can ask the person to ventilate. Next slide, please. Catharsis, we need to build a rapport. Okay, patient will trust you, then patient will ventilate all the things, whether sorrow, frustration, fear, pain, embarrassing feelings, everything. So this is going to help a lot in chronic conditions. We need to reassure also. Next slide, please. Then due to some skin disorders, patient may lose their looks, become socially withdrawn, or leave jobs, or become irregular. So aim here is to teach the patient requisite skills for coping with the problem, as well as we need to assist them. So patient can be advised about personal care, job, family, social life. So patient need to be encouraged to stick to the treatment, okay? Because many times they feel that how many months or years I can take treatment, I want to stop it, I want to see. And also we need to build self-esteem. Next slide, please. Relaxation procedures, these are simple thing, okay? Structured one is JPMR, which is in depth, where it may take half an hour or 45 minutes to do the complete procedure. So just I mentioned it here. Then guided imagery, guided feedback is there, then meditation, then other things are yoga, etc. So next slide, please. To conclude, have strategies to approach these patients. That is the first thing that we have to. So we can't ignore, or we can't be in denial where we are going to tell the okay, person might not be having something else. So two strategies we need to adopt: category of psychodermatological condition and by the nature of underlying psychopathological condition. Next, please. Then again, the question will come with the dermatologist: why me? Why should I treat or address the psychological problems at all? Okay, usually the cases that dermatologists feel compelled to address are generally with clear presentation. Okay, so patient who has depression, any person with the medicine, I mean MBBS training is definitely going to pick that up. So if you feel, or if you have a gut feeling that okay, I feel that there is some problem, then definitely. Then question will come up whether I should prescribe or not to prescribe. What should I do? Okay, so better thing is to explain the patient whole the rational model, then get in touch with one of the psychiatric colleague, then we can liaise and work on that. An open mind, thorough knowledge of differential diagnosis and good IP skills and liaison between two specialties are priorities and need of future which we need to build in a longer term. So thank you. That's in brief about what I wanted. Shall we go ahead with these things, sir? Question and answers which we had received.
Yeah, please.
Yes,
please.
sir. Yeah, these are certain questions which we had come up from social network. So one question was,
You're adding a necessary help in we suspect. Accessibility.
Yeah, antidepressants may be indicated in some cases of primary or secondary psychiatric disorders and comorbidities, as we have outlined in previous slide. I mean, there are various studies also which we have looked at. For example, diseases like alopecia areata and vitiligo have been found to have bidirectional relationship. Okay, in large-scale cohort studies which we have found. That is, depression is there, alopecia areata and vitiligo is going to worsen. If alopecia areata is there, there is going to be depression. So we have to treat both the condition. It's not just one condition. Then chronic pruritus, that is unresponsive to topical treatment and oral histamines, will definite from oral antidepressants. So this is one of the systematic. I have mentioned the reference of it was published in 2017. So that's going to be useful. Next slide. Then there was another population cohort study of 69,000 patients with plaque psoriasis. So when SSRIs are used, it showed that risk of switching from non-systematic to systematic psoriasis treatment was significantly reduced. So in the patients who have received SSRI. Next slide, please.
Dr. Harbi Shettar, excuse me, you have to put it on mute. There is a lot of noise, background noise. Dr. Harbi Shettar.
Sorry.
Yeah, next
Yes,
one is
sir.
lichen, which was mentioned in the question. Okay, lichen in the double-blind study of 309 patients, it showed that lichen simplex chronicus, eczema, contact dermatitis, moderate to severe age. Okay, when they randomized and received either doxepin 5% cream or vehicle cream for 4 times daily for 7 days. By 7th day, those people who were on topical doxepin, there was improvement subjectively. Next, atopic dermatitis. So there was a pilot study with bupropion at 2 doses, 150 and 300 milligram in atopic dermatitis and Urias group. So sample size was less because 10 patients in AD, 10 patients in PS group. But there was reduction in affected body surface in AD group in 6 patients, and in psoriasis group, 8 out of 10 patients showed improvement after 6 weeks of treatment. Next slide, please. So another question was, what would be the drug of choice in trichotillomania and skin ticks? So first of all, trichotillomania treatment depends on the age of the patient, either it is in children, young adult or adult. If there are children, nothing to be done. We have to just intervene like non-pharmacological intervention. With that, the child is going to improve, and with the developmentally, that's going to subside. As such, FDA has not approved any drug for TTM, trichotillomania. But there are various studies which have come up with results. Clomipramine has showed some promise, but results are inconsistent. Fluoxamine and paroxetine are useful. In our clinic, what we have done is we have used fluoxetine as such for many patients, and we have seen improvement. When we felt there is improvement, we have stopped after a year. We have seen an adult relapsing after 2 years with trichotillomania. A lady was a teacher about 30 years, treated for trichotillomania for a year with antidepressant. Then we stopped. After 2 years, she relapsed again. Then we just put fluoxetine 10 milligram, then remitted. She's asymptomatic. Then for neurotic expansion, yes.
Sorry to intervene.
Yes,
what is your take on NAC? Because there are a lot of dermatology. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I will come to that, sir. In the
Okay. Fine. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah, how effective would the counseling be? So again, it will depending on the patient. So remember, we have biological basis for most of these conditions. So we can't just go just with the non-pharmacologic interventions alone. Those may be useful for mild condition, but when it comes to syndromal things, so we have to go ahead with pharmacotherapy and non-pharmacological intervention. And when we combine both, then the effect or improvement, whatever is seen, is much better than just using one of the intervention. So another question was, how helpful would self-help groups and group counseling be in chronic skin diseases? So there's one of the important thing. In the West, we have self-help groups which are active, which will help the patient to share their experiences and their problems, etc. But in India, the concept is still evolving. We haven't seen much. Not only in this group related to dermatology, even in a psychiatry and all, we are seeing evolution of self-help groups, which are wonderful things which are happening now. Next slide, please. Nail biting, trichotillomania, and skin and ticks are genetic. And what are the chances of affecting it next generation? Okay, yes, these are mentioned along the spectrum of OCD. So we have seen genetic component in these things. Then there is a specific gene which has been found consistently in around 35 families with trichotillomania. The gene is SLIT-K1 gene. So, however, we can't predict the exact percentage of transmission. Like, for example, if both patients are diabetic, we may tell, okay, the child is going to almost 100% is going to be diagnosed with diabetic or etc. Then there is another question about alternative methods to avoid hair pulling. So already, I think we have dealt in a little bit in detail about how how we are going to manage trichotillomania non-pharmacologically. Then there are certain other questions, so which were more we felt non-specific sort of thing. So one question was like over-possessive patient, how to handle. For example, even for a small pimple, they may go over the board or something like that. Here, the problem is the person personality will be something like that, where the person is going to have more anxiety. So the person not only will be on over the board, not only with this thing, person will be over the board with other conditions also. So, for example, even if the person has diabetes also, he will be over the board with about that. The person has any other condition, he will be over the board with that also. So that's in general, I think. So that's one thing. Yeah, another question was how to counsel patient to seek counseling when conditions like OCD are recognized them. So when OCD is recognized, then we have to definitely tell, okay, see, the problem is this. It's a OCD which needs an active psychological intervention. So we have to take treatment. So that thing has to be communicated clearly to the patient so that we'll avoid all the unpleasantries with the patient. Then how to handle patient with body dysmorphic disorder who is insisting on doing on heavy procedures was one more question. So, okay, so again, it falls in the category of body dysmorphic disorder, which comes along the spectrum of OCD. The treatment will be along the lines of OCD. Again, we have to tell that, okay, these are the normal, there is some deviation which we feel. Probably we need to speak with a mental health professional. We will discuss and we can take a decision. So if we negate straight away that no, everything is perfect, you are perfectly all right, what will happen is the person will stop coming to you, he will visit another dermatologist with the same question. So next question was same, how to tackle doctor shopping. Then as sir was asking about N-acetylcysteine, it has come up in a big way in recent times. So the indications are for trichotillomania, onychotillomania, and onychophagia, skin phasing, neurotic excoriation. But the thing is, the usual dose is up to 1200 milligram per day, 600 milligram BD. We have seen studies where they go up to 3000 milligram per day also. Interesting thing is, Cochrane systematic review demonstrate that there is a good evidence of N-acetylcysteine in trichotillomania. Okay, so there are various studies which are substantiating this. For example, in one of the studies, in a TTM scale, when the patients receive 1200 to 2400 milligram per day of N-acetylcysteine, the improvement was almost 56%. Then there was an RCT which they looked at excoriation disorder. They found that in 50% of patients there was improvement. Then in onychophagia or nail biting, RCT shows improvement with 800 milligram N-acetylcysteine per day. However, there were some side effects also. For example, taste alteration, nausea, vomiting, at times abdominal pain, at times urticaria, also skin rash also came in. We also need to be mindful of the contraindication, whereas person who is on nitroglycerin, we have to be careful because it's going to cause vasodilation and hypotension. So upcoming thing is N-acetylcysteine in trichotillomania and other conditions. So I think there are some more questions. Are there any short courses or certified courses that a dermatologist do which might help in effective counseling in certain cases? So what I would like to tell is in many countries, they have started psychodermatology courses for psychiatrists, dermatologists, and the clinical psychologists also. So replicating same model, we at Manipal have started a fellowship course, which was supposed to start in June or January session. But due to COVID times, it got postponed. The duration is 3 months. Then we are going to take 1 or 2, either psychiatrist or psychologist or the thing. So the focus will be to make them aware of all 3 disciplines, where, like what are the common conditions, how they are going to have an interface, and how we can intervene from all the angles, from a dermatological point of view, from psychiatric point of view, from psychological point of view. About counseling, just the basic counseling may not suffice in many conditions. So what exactly we are doing is most of the things will fall under counseling. For example, reassurance, explaining about the patient, okay, letting patient talk about his or his worries, anxieties, etc. Those things are just some components of counseling only. Okay, then another question is it necessary that we should refer acne, excoriae and other factitious dermatitis cases to psychiatrists? So rather than calling it as whether to refer or not to refer, so what we can think of is how best we can help a patient in an integrated manner. So if there is a option of availing a service of a mental health professional, definitely go ahead. If it's not, just ring up or see how best we can do. Okay, so liaising will help us gain knowledge. For example, I will gain more knowledge through dermatologist about their condition, about their concerns. It's vice versa. So having an integrated approach is going to be of use because, for example, person has anxiety, I can give a anxiety. For example, I can give a clonazepam. Anxiety symptom may reduce, but whereas underlying disorder may not subside. For that, again, we need an expert opinion. The treatment may be for 9 months or 12 months or so. So again, at that time, again, we may have to go back and consult or seek opinion from a mental health professional. Same way, for example, person with a chronic psychiatric disorder may come up with skin condition. Usual tendencies like put an antihistamine and send the patient. Any itching or anything is there. Usual tendencies like, okay, give an antihistamine consent. However, that's not the right way to handle the patients or intervene. Then another question was, is psychiatric history important in every case of long-standing cases? Yes, definitely, because the studies have shown almost 30 to 40% of the patients who are visiting dermatology OPD have one or the other psychiatric condition. Though may not be syndromal psychiatric disorder as such, but the person has a problem which needs to be intervened, which can be just tackled just by simple counseling or any other means. Yes, sir. These are the certain questions which we had seen and tried to address those.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I think it has been very wonderful to hear the cause, the effect, and the pharmacological and the non-pharmacological approaches to dealing with psychodermatological issues.
Yes, sir.
All said and done, I would like all of you to go ahead with, there's a nice review article published in the Indian Journal of Dermatology way back in 2015 August. I'm sure Dr. Chandrasekhar would be aware of it.
Yes.
I would like to take up, please, there are many things which have been discussed, but it is underutilized. Psychiatrists are really underutilized, excepting in probably medical colleges. But down reality is because when 1/3 of the patients need psychiatric care actively, maybe pharmacological, non-pharmacological, it's going to take a long time, and India will definitely catch up. But I would like to ask one question to Dr. Chandrasekhar to complete what we have been discussing is, are there something called complementary psychocutaneous therapies? Are they being done in India?
No, sir. No.
Like aromatherapy for anxiety, St. John's work for depression. And then this is, of course, I've taken it from your journal. That's why I'm asking you, because these are for completion's sake, probably they must have been, or melatonin. So these are some issues. And a comprehensive approach, as you feel, that probably a psychiatrist and dermatologist work together in the same place. Probably, like your fellowship is already allowing dermatologists to come, probably you can add up something like this so that the psychiatrists or psychologists will be able to do along with you. As Ravindra has already said, an integrated approach and everything being available to one place. Because this is the truth about general hospital psychiatry.
Yes.
Because general hospital psychiatry, because 1/3 of all patients who come to any OPD would need anyway some psychiatric issues to be settled. And we are dealing with a chronic problem. We are dealing with something which people don't want to believe. They don't want to take home, and we never talk about it. Let it be vitiligo, let it be leukoderma. You can see what kind of psychological problems people do handle. I'm sure, psychiatrists and dermatologists probably must have some kind of a short course which will expose them to all that, so that they think aloud And they should be able to, just like, because cosmetology, once I did something like, without the mind, there's nothing. No, I must feel that I must look good. I must feel that I am not so bad. So obviously these have little issues which has been sorted out from the point of view of patients. I'm sure seminars like this will definitely enrich not just knowledge, but the practice of the specialties to a logical end, so that people will be able to get better. That's the purpose of this kind of an academic discussion. I'm sure Dr. Chandrasekhara, would you be able to take up some questions, or you already have some questions already on the screen?
No, sir. I was saying most of them were addressed. But I would like to have two things, sir, here. One, it has proved in COVID era that the virtual world is better than the real world as far as the medical education is concerned, learning is concerned.
Yes,
Again,
sir. But
it is proved across. One of the major things what we face as a dermatologist, the moment we say that, look, you need a psychiatric consultation or a psychologist intervention in your problem, the patient has got that fear of blaming them or blaming them that they are a patient of psychiatry. But it's a wonderful idea that the patient can sit in my clinic, they can have a consultation with my psychiatrist, so that the patient is not exposed to his clinic, the patient is not exposed to anyone else, they can have one-to-one consultation. That is one of the things what we should look for now. I think probably we are going to implement as an immediate. The second thing,
I think they should go together. There's
yes,
no second thought
it should
about
go
it.
together,
Yes.
because I am
Yes.
sitting with my patient and I recognize that the patient has a problem. Immediately I call on my psychiatrist, probably on appointment basis, that he can also talk to the patient, he can also counsel. Is that necessary that you have to have a patient in front of you, or can you do a virtual consultation along with a dermatologist?
Yes, virtual
Your
is
opinion.
possible. It should be
Okay, sir.
possible. You know, as a dermatologist, I've already
Yes,
looked
I
at
will do
the
that, sir.
lesions.
I'll get back to you. Yes, sir.
That is one
Yes,
aspect.
sir.
Second aspect, I would like to tell, Dr. Ravi
Fine,
was
sir.
telling they have a course of 3 months for a psychodermatology at their Medipal. Can it be done online? Because people to come stay with you, for example, I'm a busy practitioner, I cannot afford to spend 3 months of my time, but I want to learn psychodermatology. I want to have a proficiency in that subject, because I run an institute where I see around 300 to 350 patients. Out of that, 40% need something like that.
That's right.
So is there any possibility that Manipal or the psychiatric grid of India, your association, can take up this something like psychodermatology, psycho-oncology, then psychoneuro, whatever it is, psychogynecology, whatever it is, such short courses online where we can all come in and we can learn from you?
I think you should propose, sir. You have already been a president of an organization. I'm sure you should take it up. I'm sure
I'm
with the
ready to
IPS
propose to my
Karnataka.
organization
I
that
think
your organization
Karnataka,
should be able
yeah,
to do
that's
it.
right. Yes.
That is the second. And third
Yes,
thing,
sir. Sir,
Ravindra?
shall I come in, sir?
yeah,
Please come in. Please come in.
Because gestation of it. So it comprises of psychiatrists, dermatologists, and clinical psychologists, sir. So because we are working in this area since last 4 to 5 years as a liaison clinic, got in touch with other bodies also. Soon we'll be sending out the membership details, etc. Also, we have a core member team which is in contact with each other since last 4 or 5 years, like dermatologists from few parts of India, psychiatrists and psychologists. Soon we'll be spreading news, and also we'll be conducting some more sessions on this topic specifically. Okay, sir. So that we will be liaising more with liaising both the disciplines as much as possible.
that's great. That's great.
Yes.
And one more confusion, what even a dermatologist as well as the patients have got, where comes the role of a psychologist and where comes the role of a psychiatrist?
Yes, sir. Good thing.
What are their roles in a particular clinic?
Yeah. Yes, sir. So as of now, what we do is psychiatrist and psychologist, we work as an integrated team. For most of the patients, we may need medicines. In addition, we need therapy also. So when to refer to a psychiatrist, when to refer to a psychologist. So usually integrated approach is the best. But we are going to tell it is since it has a biological basis, so we have to take help of medicines. Then from psychiatrist, we'll refer to psychologist. So that's one thing. Because if we refer directly to psychologist, at times they may not be able to they are not able to start pharmacotherapy. So that's also needed. So it's better to refer to psychiatrist, then we can streamline it further. Sir.
That's a wonderful,
Okay.
that's a nice answer.
That's wonderful. And one more question from my side. Of course, please don't take it otherwise. Most of the time when we refer the patient to a psychiatrist, I think they come and tell that the doctor wrote some drug and wrote some tablet and asked me to take it. Even he did not spend whatever the amount of time you spent in referring me to psychiatrist, because you have told what is the basis, why you do want to go, everything. But he simply gave a prescription for tablet and asked me to take this and come back after 3 weeks. This is the commonest thing what we hear from the patients. So I just want to know the basis.
Relevant question. Yes, sir.
I just want to know whether pharmacotherapy gets initiated first, then the counseling starts in a better way or something like that. Is there any rationale, or it is just because of busy schedule, busy OPD, we do that?
No, I think Ravindra has already said, they have to be together. The problem is where psychologists should come, or when the psychiatrist should initiate something. It depends on the cause and the effect and what you kind of see. Because the biological thing cannot be underestimated. At the same time, there is underutilization of non-pharmacological treatments too.
Yes, sir. So this problem can be solved if we have an in-house psychiatrist or a good friend as a colleague who has orientation towards psychodermatology or interest in this area. So probably liaising with the particular mental health professionals will be beneficial, sir. Because if we have that orientation, so we won't see that patient just like any other psychiatric patient or just any other patient. So we'll be spending more time, we'll be exploring, we'll also be explaining why psychological or psychiatric intervention is essential and how best we can help each other, both the skin condition and psychological condition. So liaising is more important here, sir. So that's what I feel is a
that's a greatness of general hospital psychiatry.
Yes. Yes,
sir. Dr. Chandrasekhar has raised two ethical issues. One,
yes,
I just want to make clear to the dermatologist, whenever a patient is referred to a psychiatrist or a department of psychiatry, it is always desirable to make a working diagnosis. That is the reason we wish to have a psychiatrist in the team to assess and make a working diagnosis. Whether this patient benefits only with medication, or not medication and therapy, or only with therapy. Once the decision is done, as a team, psychologists will also work and will coordinate with that. So this is first question answer to Dr. Chandrasekhar who raised. Second one, you raise another very ethical issue. You would have taken so much of pains to refer a patient to a psychiatrist, knowing the limitation that I have come up to this, I am unable to work beyond this. And that's a very sensitive issue. So probably it is desirable that we need to educate our psychiatrists. Whenever there is a cross-reference, we need to put in little more efforts, because when a schizophrenia patient comes or a depression or a bipolar comes, we have a protocol to educate, tell how long, etc. Similarly, we should also respect, not take it as a very minor one. It's a minor psychological problem, take this tablet, the patient will be all right. No way. Probably we need to sensitize our community as psychiatrists to see that when the person comes, because the doctor would have motivated. In olden days, in Victoria Hospital, after psychiatry department was dermatology department.
Exactly.
So the patient used to ask, sir, they said that you don't have any problem, go to psychiatrist. When I don't have a problem, why should I come to a psychiatrist? This was the common question they used to ask. Second, and most of the patients who are illiterate used to enter the psychiatry department first. One very famous Dr. Singh was there. He used to ask them, kya ho raha hai aapko, kujli ho raha hai, neend aa raha hai nahi. Oh, all those 5 questions, neend nahi. He used to write on prescription and then used to tell, please go to the next department. So we have to see both sides of it. I think how the dermatologists are so keen on giving the better care to patient, we need to sensitize our psychiatrists to respect that and work with these two people listening well. That's what Dr. Ravindra also said.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
That's wonderful.
So I think we had, Vijay, should I go ahead with, are there some more questions?
I think it's best if the
They can type
doctor,
out an
doctor.
answer if they
Yeah,
want
yeah. I
to.
think that's better. If they want to just quickly type the answers for the sake of the audience.
If they go to the chat box and then probably
or
get one or two.
Q&A section, they just
Yes.
say type answer there. Click on type answer, 1 or 2 answers if you can type, and we can wind up. I think so. A few more minutes, and you can wind up. So type.
There are some question called self-help groups. Of course, we attempted to create a self-help group for vitiligo patients way back about 10 years back when Dr. Venkat thought of having a vitiligo day program for across the state. And we formed a group. And I think probably we did not take up a proper direction or proper, curve. I mean, the exact steps to take it forward. So we failed it. So there are self-help groups which are available across globe, and not much self-help group when compared to dermatological diseases in India. We don't find them as such now because we had an attempt, but we failed. But it's highly advisable to have self-help groups, because when I go to an international seminar on psychology, I see alopecia areata self-help group, a separate session of 3 to 4 hours, where virtual patients come, they tell their stories, they tell their, how they cope up with the disease, and they tell their positive stories. They write poems, they make all sketches, and it's all there in the conference hall. So that situation has to come in India. Probably we as leaders of specialties like psychiatric dermatology, we need to initiate. And as rightly said, when a liaison occurs between the two departments, as a psychodermatology, probably it will have more sense when we do a self-help. That's my view on that. There was one question on that.
Right. That's wonderful.
And there was somebody who wanted your contact details, so she wants to do psycho-oncology fellowship.
Psychodermatology.
Psychodermatology.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Can share our details.
Any?
I think Vijay, you can. It's already 9:15.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Overshot.
Vijay, you can close it already. 2 hours.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we had an excellent session. There's no doubt it's been covered comprehensive. I didn't know at the beginning that it will cover so it's a vast area. It's not going to happen in one session, I'm afraid. That's what I realized. So we need to be very careful next time arranging such a conference. We need to be focused, and you need to take up part of it. I think with this, I have to thank my co-coordinators, Dr. Jagdish and Dr. Mahesh, and also Microlabs Chief, Mr. Ganeshan, for helping us, set this program up and running so nicely. We had about 80 participants, and at one time there were about 68 in the Zoom, as well as in I don't know how many in YouTube. So there were several questions. Unfortunately, we couldn't answer many of them. So Dr. Ravindra Munari did join late, but I'm afraid I'm very happy that he was able to cover so many aspects. There's so much I could have discussed, but unfortunately, lack of time couldn't. Dr. Chandrasekhar is in the world of dermatology. He's one of the chief dermatologists in India and expert, and he's the person to seek help, and he's into teaching, training, entrepreneur, and setting up clinics and things like that. So, and also set up courses and things. So he's one of the leaders in the medical fraternity, in the medical field rather. He's very supportive of everyone. So thank you very much, Dr. Chandrasekhar, for attending. We are very grateful to you. Thank you, Professor Ganeshan. As Dr. Ganeshan is a very senior psychiatrist and is very supportive of everyone.
Dr. Gopal Krishnan.
Yes, sir.
Gopal Krishnan.
Dr. Professor Gopal Krishnan. And Dr. Jagdish, again, thank you very much. Anything else, Dr. Jagdish, you want to say final words?
Dr. Manoli also.
Yeah, I've already informed Dr. Manoli. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Thanks to the whole team.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful thing. Thank you. Good night. Let's have a pleasant night.
Thanks a lot. It was a great program. Thanks a lot. It was.
Yeah. This will be available on YouTube also. Recording will be available on YouTube. Thank you.
I will send the recording again anyway.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Night. Thank you.